the reverse step up. The concept of stepping down, that motion we've been doing for millions, thousands of years, whatever you believe in. That's a natural motion, but in terms of an actual exercise progression, it all started with Carl Peterson, Canadian downhill ski physiotherapist. Basically, everyone's having knee injuries on this team. And he figured out that by doing a certain version of reverse step up, he was able to strengthen and protect the knee. Now for skiing, he did the Peterson version, which is the version, if you look at my leg, that's a version where you stand on a box and you actually lift your heel as you go down, putting the weight on the calf. Now, that does tend to engage the VMO, and because your knee's going over your toe, it works the VMO, but it also works your calf really hard. And in skiing, you actually sit on your calves at certain points. It basically, by getting stronger calves, you can protect knee injuries even more in that sport. That wouldn't be true for all sports. So that version is what he came up with. It strengthens your calf and it strengthens your VMO. But if you think about that version, these were already Olympic level skiers. So they already had quads to some degree. If you take most basketball players and you try to put them on Peterson step up, they're not gonna have the stability. They're gonna be flopping all over the place. So realize we're already talking about Olympic athletes who had super strong quads, but needed to get them ready for somewhere between 80 and 100 mile an hour downhill landing. So they had to get super duper strong. So we actually used the Peterson step up, but we use this in level 3 of the superhuman program. So we actually build up to this. So while the Peterson step up was the first form of reverse step up used as a standardized exercise, Charles Poliquin made the second form. And the Poliquin step up, it basically, if you look at my leg again, the Poliquin step up starts with the heel elevated, and Poliquin was using the Peterson step up with great results, but found that some people, just as I've seen, can't get into the Peterson step up very well. They flop around trying to balance on the ball of their foot. So he used a slant board or a wedge under the heel to hold the heel down. That forced the quad to work, it forced the knee over the toe, it forced the difficulty of the movement, but without as much balance issue because you aren't having to balance your own heel, it's planted against something. However, even for that one, the ability to hold and extend on the ball of your foot is too much for a lot of knees. And again, if Carl Peterson was working with Olympic skiers, Charles Poliquin worked with Olympic athletes of all different sorts. So while some of them were not as strong as even your worst Olympic skier, I work with athletes of all different kinds, including basketball players who are going to have even weaker knees, more painful and problematic knees than your worst of other Olympic sports, and often super tall and no balance and no quads really built up at all. So I had to come up with a further version, and it started actually the Patrick version of step up, which simply means that you don't have to lift your heel at all. So it's simpler, it's easier to balance, and you work your ankle mobility. So Charles Poliquin was one of my mentors, and he preached ankle mobility, and I found this as a way to get into ankle mobility for athletes who could not do split squats. So ATG style split squat works your ankle mobility like crazy, but I found some athletes could not get into that without pain. This allowed me to start training that Achilles area, that ankle mobility. I used it in certain rehab cases, forgot about it, and then my wife, who was told that she had cartilage issues, torn cartilage in her knee, she found that she actually couldn't do these other versions, and on her own, without me telling her to, she was like, why don't I just do it without having to elevate my heel at all? And she actually used this to successfully heal her knee, and I went, holy shit, yes, we need an even further regression. So we actually, for example, in our knee ability programs, we start with this because it's the simplest. You can stand on just a 2-inch box. Any degree of heel elevation for a Poliquin step up would be a little bit harder than a Patrick step up. So there's different ways to progress these things, but generally with the Patrick step up, you're thinking a balance of ankle mobility and knee stability, and it's the simplest one to get people into. It's the easiest learning curve. It's the easiest to start getting a workout without risk of losing balance or tweaking your knee in the process. But you do then want to stabilize the knee even further with the Poliquin step up, and you eventually want to make sure that your lower leg can handle anything you can put out with your knee with the Peterson step up. So that's kind of the evolution, and it was an evolution of regression, not necessarily progression. from the Peterson step up to Poliquin to Patrick step up. The rules of all three of these, when in doubt, lower. So while we normally train Peterson step up on a 6-inch box, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going lower. Same for any of these step ups, you can always go lower. Start with the weaker side. Starting with the weaker side means that you'll rebalance. Some people would think that to rebalance, you'd want to do more sets on your weaker side, but now it's harder for that side to recover. So I've been that route, and it doesn't work as well as it sounds, because now it's harder for that weaker side to recover, and sometimes the pain gets even worse on that side since it can't recover as much as the other side. But if you start every set with the weaker side and you only match it on the stronger side, maybe your stronger side is here. But I promise you with progression, even that weaker one right now will end up stronger than your stronger one is now, but then you'll be even. So we don't want to go from here to here. We want to go from here to there, where they're both even. You pause on the heel of the bottom foot, and you'll see this in every single one. If I'm working my left leg, let's take a look at my feet. If I'm working my left leg and I go down to the floor on the right leg, if I use my foot there, I can cheat the exercise. We have to eliminate cheating, and you do that by going only to the heel and by pausing on it, because a lot of people will try to bounce. So every single form, pause on that heel and then go up. Pause on the heel and then go up. That's how you standardize the form for all three of these versions. And then the hips finish in front of the top ankle. So if I'm working my left leg and my hips finish behind, if we looked at a vertical line, if my hips finish behind the ankle, I'm not necessarily working the areas we want to be working. So you want to film these, all three of these, you want to film from a side angle for us. You always film from a side angle so we can see that the hips actually go in front of the ankle. This would be working properly, hip going in front of the ankle as opposed to hip finishing behind the ankle. The why for any of these as a whole, if you take a look at my legs, you have these teardrop shaped VMO muscles. These are the most important to stabilize your kneecaps, and they happen to work hardest in the top quarter. So this would be the top quarter, and then those same muscles again work hardest in the bottom quarter of a squat. So in all through the middle, it's not like they're not working. You're getting more into the glutes and outer quads. The very bottom for those VMOs, and then the very top. So the step up gives you an entrance point. So if someone can't even squat all the way down, you can start strengthening the VMO, and that will actually carry over to the bottom quarter. But as you get more and more advanced, you'll see that an athlete could actually have a VMO very strong in the bottom. They could have a great deep squat, but be very weak in the top quarter and actually suffer to turn their lifting numbers into speed and jumping on the playing surface, because usually the speed and jumping on the playing surface is expressed more in that top quarter. So I consider this whole category of exercise the most important strength exercise you can do for that bounce factor. So those are the rules of all of them. That's the why of why are we even training the VMO. And now let's get into the exercises themselves. And me and one of the trainers, we're going to look at each of these. Plus, we're going to look at the rhythm squat, which is a sort of dynamic, explosive version of step up that we progress to in level 4 of our superhuman program, and it's used elsewhere. So let's get into it. Here's the Patrick step up. So let's take a look at her feet here, and we can see she's going to stand flat on a box. Go ahead, babe, and start doing it. So the first thing you see is that she's going to step down to her heel. Let's come around here and get the side angle. So on her right foot, only the heel is touching. That way she can't cheat with the foot, and you'll notice her knee stays straight. But if you go to the heel, it's much easier to keep the knee straight. As soon as you go to the ball of the foot, you're more likely to cheat with everything down there. Now, if you look at her left Achilles, you'll see that she's trying to keep her heel down and actually let her ankle stretch. She's doing a very good job. Now, you can see here I put a bunch of different surfaces. So babe, why don't you come try this one? Go ahead and switch to your right, give the left a little break, and try here. This is a 6-inch box. This is a pretty standard height. Like 6 inches is a very good height for male athletes. 6-inch box with your body weight on back for 10 reps. We use as a general standard mark. You can see her ankle is having to stretch pretty good here to get it. She's still stepping down only to her heel, and her hips are finishing in front of her ankle. See that? So she's doing a perfect job here. Now go ahead and step off there. If there was any pain at this height, you would simply go lower. Go ahead and do a few more. There is nothing wrong with going lower. Just keep thinking about the form of the exercise. And every time you do it, I want you to think to control down, pause at the bottom, and then go up. That pause at the bottom, make sure there's no bounce. The control down, no matter how little the box is, the control down makes the targeted muscle work. And over time, this will get better and better and better. So when in doubt, never, ever, ever work too high. It's always safe to go down lower. Go ahead and step off. Even if that meant using more weight lower. So this is a rare case of an exercise where I would rather have you use more weight on your back or holding dumbbells. Those are typically the ways we do this. I'd rather have you use more weight lower than try to go higher. Because say she can do this range of motion without pain. She can add weight and hit the muscles harder. But if she's using a range of motion that hurts, then she's just going to be going through that pain, and we don't want to work through the pain. So you'd be surprised sometimes by going lower and getting stronger, you get a much better workout than trying to go higher and work through pain. Good, now step off there. Good, so she did a perfect job. You saw perfect form on it. After all these step-ups, I'll then show you myself, since I've hit the superhuman standard for all these exercises, I'll show you kind of how do you make it tougher after a 6-inch box with body weight on back. But before I do that, while she finishes out, I'll let her just kind of talk about her experience with this exercise, why she did it, when she does it, how it's helped her. So I'll let her take the floor.
So my name is Alissa Patrick, and basically I was a figure skater for 10 years competitively, and the left leg was my landing leg. So a few years ago, after everything, my knee started hurting. We went to the doctor, Ben was with me, and I had torn knee cartilage. And the doctor was basically like, that's it. Like, there's nothing you can really do about it. And Ben and I together, I would work out with him. I would do the Peterson step up, I'd do the Poliquin step up, and my knees would still hurt. So actually on our honeymoon, there was a rock, and I was just like kind of messing around with a flat foot. And I was like, oh my gosh, this doesn't hurt me, I can do this. And so basically I've been doing that, and Ben was like, this is such a great, exercise, and he had actually already come up with that to help somebody else, and we basically knew that that was an amazing exercise that anyone could do, since so many things had hurt my knee, and it helped heal it. And so now I've been able to gradiently go up from painful step-ups to not painful step-ups, and it's helped so many people, including myself, so what can I say?
There is nobody better to demonstrate the Poliquin step-up, because Derek has actually crafted this slant board, and we'll show it to you from different angles, but he did this so that athletes anywhere can do this exercise. You can go ahead and start showing it. We used to get these steel slant boards. That is not something you could ever take with you to the gym. They're super heavy, kind of dangerous. This folds up. He found the value of this exercise so important for him, it meant enough to make this board. Now, one slight difference, you can keep showing from right there. One slight difference from this one is this one becomes very important to turn your working leg slightly out. So now let's come around and get a front shot again. Maybe you can get 5 more reps on this side, and then we'll switch. It's just slightly pointed out so that his big toe can plant. Because if he avoids that big toe, he's going to avoid the VMO. And this exercise puts the most direct weight on that VMO, because when he goes up, he has to hold it. Good. So this one, unlike the other ones, you're trying to actually get a 2-second hold at the top and actually contract right there. You'll still see all the other form points are in. He's only lowering to his heel. His hips are finishing in front of his ankle, so he's doing perfect form. You can go ahead and switch sides here to keep it going. And the last couple details I'll tell you, you'll notice he's on a 3-inch box. This one is all about the stability to hold that top end of the range of motion. And if you look at his ankle actually is about 6 inches high. So he's working as hard here. He's actually covering as much ground here as he would with a flat foot on a 6-inch box. So this exercise is plenty hard at this height, and it's very hard at the top. So we don't train with this one. We do not train higher and higher boxes. I find that 3 inches or maybe up to about 8 centimeters for people using centimeters, that's plenty, and then you just want to get stronger and more stable. So again, our superhuman level is your body weight on your back for 10 reps on a 3-inch box with that heel elevated about 45 degrees. And now I'll let Derek talk a little bit. He can kind of show you how the product works if you want to take a look, so that in the meantime you can kind of makeshift your own, or you can look into getting one of these. And also I'll let him talk about his experience with this exercise in general.
Yeah, so like Ben said, we created this slant board just for this particular exercise, along with some other stretching exercises. But this in particular was pivotal for me transforming my knee health and my athletic ability. Yeah, all ATG athletes start to develop a VMO because of this particular exercise. Like Ben said, this is kind of like one of the only exercises that really isolate that VMO. So as he was saying, you really control it. Having this slant board allows you to really put tension on that VMO and engage and squeeze at the top. So I'm over 42 years old, and in my whole life I never knew how to train legs properly until I started working out with Ben. And this along with the split squat were only the two primary exercises that had developed me and got me to where I am today. So we developed this slant board, which is an adjustable slant board. So you can kind of gradually get to this height. So what I was doing was all the way up. And like Ben said, if you need to kind of start at a lower height, you can do that with this slant board and kind of start working your way up from the Patrick step up to the Polygon steps up to really engage that VMO. So it's easier, the lower it goes down, the tougher it goes down. So there's 5 different levels to this slant board, and this is primarily just for this Polygon exercises. So this is one of the exercises that has really transformed my legs. My legs were like wet noodles before I started training ATG, and this was one of the exercises that really kind of put some muscle on my legs and gave me a little definition so I can wear the ATG shorts when they come out. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Jeff is a perfect guy to show the Peterson step up, because this is where your lower legs need to get really strong, and Jeff has some of the strongest lower legs in the gym. So you'll see here as he does the rep, it's going to look similar to both the Patrick and the Poliquin versions, but he has to balance that himself. You can see the balance is the challenging factor, because you're putting all that weight on the ball of your foot. Jeff is just starting to dunk with us and getting into some of this more specific training. This is not an exercise you have to have, but when it comes to higher level athletics, I consider this huge for athleticism and getting your feet strong. Now, if you've noticed, the higher his heel lifts, the more the knee actually goes over the toe. So with this one, I'm never going to tell you to use more than a 6-inch box. If you can't use a 6-inch box, honestly, you probably shouldn't be doing this one yet. Yep, you can just keep going back and forth. You could go to a lower box, but really I don't think you should be doing this one if you can't do a 6-inch box. You should have a good base in the other 2 forms before doing this exercise. But you will see as he goes, the more his heel lifts, the more the knee goes over the toe. So rather than raising the box height and getting into interesting form, I want you to just keep dominating the form more and more at this height. Feel it?
Oh yeah.
Nice. So you will feel your VMOs, but it's very advanced and you need strong lower legs just to be able to do this. So for guys who have done a real knee transformation, I think this exercise is huge. That's why we use it in level 3 of Superhuman, because you've jacked up your VMOs, and now we need to make sure that your foot and lower leg and calf can handle the force of the VMO. So we use this as a preparatory exercise before more explosive plyometrics. He's doing a perfect job with his form. With any of these, if you do it right, you can feel a workout without even any weight. But we like to progress this to 10 reps with your body weight on your back, at which point, just keep trying to dominate the form more. I haven't seen better benefits to trying more weight, because if you go more weight, but now look at my leg, if you just lift your heel less, then is there actually more load on your quads and your calves? No, there's not. So just keep progressing to actually be able to get that same 45-degree angle that you were able to get on the Poliquin step up, but doing it on your own. So for me, this was one of the tricks that got me to be able to dunk off one foot, because I would just get too much shin splints and stuff like that. So this is awesome for shin splints. A lot of guys build up quads and wind up with shin splints because they can't handle the force. I'll let Jeff get a pretty good workout here. He did perfect form on it. I put him on the spot to do this exercise. So now I will let Jeff actually talk about this whole category of exercises because I've observed Jeff in the gym with various personal training clients using different forms, using the Patrick step up for ankle mobility, using the Paul step up for knee mobility. So I'll let Jeff kind of take it from here and just talk about his personal experience with reverse step ups.
So the reverse step up is something I usually always put in the program when I get new clients. The reason being is because most clients come in and they don't have any quads, or they don't really know how to even use their knees in general. You'll see them, if we introduce any sort of squatting, they always want to squat into their hips instead of using their knees. So it's a really easy way to teach people the pattern to begin with, and also that a lot of people will come in here and one side will be generally stronger than the other, almost every single time. So a lot of the personal clients that I train are not athletes. They're businessmen and women, moms, dads, etc. So a lot of them have extensive knee problems in the past, or even just daily knee pain, or one side or the other. So we'll always start exactly how the exercises were listed out today. Most everyone will start with the reverse step up or the Patrick step up, and then we'll progress from there. I don't have too many people in the Peterson, as you can see. Even I was struggling with the Peterson. I did do squats a couple hours ago, so my quads are fried, but it's no excuse. They're very challenging, but then a lot will move on to the Pollock one, just for the fact that they're generally not as aware and in tune with their bodies as athletes are. So the Pollock one's usually the easiest because you can elevate the heel and they don't really have to focus too much on the balance or things like that. They can just do the movement and then strengthen the knees. And then later, depending on the client, we'll move them into squats. But for the most part, they get a lot of benefit from those, and just like Ben said, really loading those up and really training people to actually use their knees. Because a lot of them like to run and do things like that as a hobby, things that are already pretty bad on not bad on your joints, but harder on your joints. So the step up's pretty much the perfect exercise for that, just for structural balance and symmetry on side to side, and then just teaching the whole pattern of pushing the knee out over the toe to initiate any sort of squatting, because a lot of them are very hip dominant. So that's my experience with it, and then also I use it in my training. Generally as accessory after my squat, but I've used all three versions. To be honest, I've probably used the Patrick step up and Pollock step up more than the Peterson, but it's definitely really, really good for the VMO. There's almost, especially on that top half, I don't even think split squats even get my VMOs as much as those do, so maybe it has a lot to say with the range I need to start strengthening in my squat. But yeah, just already right now they're pumped up and on fire from doing maybe 10 reps on each side on 6 inches. So it's a great exercise for loading the quads and learning how to squat with your thighs and with your legs instead of your hips.
Connor's the perfect guy to show the rhythm squat, because this is actually how we take the VMOs and we make the VMOs, the muscles themselves, more elastic. I'm gonna have him go at a side angle here just for the sake of the video, so you can see his hip joint in relation to his ankle joint. Connor, you can start pumping out some reps. So you'll notice this is like a dynamic step up. He's getting that same knee over toe. He's trying to push those hips forward. Yep, there you go. There, now he's getting into it. So from ankle up, he's trying to get his hips to finish in front of his ankles. And you'll see me do this at target weight. Target weight on this is double body weight for 50 reps. What happens is you almost tire out the VMOs, so the only way to keep getting up is not by slowly doing it, but is by bouncing and learning to use elasticity. Your calves will also be on fire, your Achilles will be on fire, your feet will be on fire because there's actually muscles in your feet. I'm gonna have him do 2,000 reps here for this demo. So you can see how simple this exercise is. That's about all we need for this one. You can see how simple this exercise is, but you can imagine if you don't have a basis in the step-ups themselves, any imbalances will not allow you to get fullest results out of this. You gotta get your leg muscles balanced to each other before trying to do that exercise. Once you do, once you have a strong, stable VMO, man, you can go to town on those and just jump higher and higher as a result. Now, Connor spent so many years just really jumping as his training and actually developed some VMOs from jumping. Because he used a specific angle and jumped with a right-left pattern and not a left-right pattern, his right VMO, the one that has more time under tension when he jumps, actually developed more than the left. So for Connor, as elastic as he is, Connor's like a natural on stuff like this. and can throw around weights that other people will train their whole lives for. So for him, he's actually spent most of his time working on the Patrick step up, the simplest one, and I'll let him kind of talk about his experience. He does them quite often, so I'll just kind of let him go from here and talk about how he uses the Patrick step up to support his dunking.
So like Ben was saying, because I have such a long history of doing elastic training only with no strength training involved at all, I've done Patrick step up the majority of my lifting time here at ATG. I haven't done any squatting yet. I haven't done any split squat yet. The only thing I've done is Patrick. And a big reason for that is because of the knee angle it gets into. The consequence of me jumping so much and getting that elastic, but not really training strength and equaling out my sides, is that I had really bad knee tendonitis in my left knee. And all those workouts and all these different variations of step-ups really lend themselves well to treating that by progressively going through them. So when I first got here, I was only doing Patrick step-ups on a 2-inch box with no weight at all, and just repping these out. And as that became pain-free, I've been slowly moving up to where now I'm on a 4-inch box doing almost body weight and repping them out. And there's even been visual differences in my left quad is now catching up to my right quad. As you guys have seen over the last few months, my jumping is beginning to increase dramatically as I get stronger, but I just maintain the elasticity through jumping. But for someone who hadn't jumped as much, something like a rhythm squat would be really good to supplement your strength training with more elastic training nature. And then the big goal for me, just as all this pertains to jumping, is I'm trying to progress all the way to where step-ups are pain-free, body weight, they're not hard at all anymore, and then I'll progress past them to split squats for the same thing, and then full depth squats for the same thing. So that's pretty much how step-ups have been helping me with my training.
So when you watch this video, you'll see it in reverse order, but I'm actually going to show you this one cold, just to show how strong you want your knees over your toes to protect you in life and in sports. So I've got double my body weight, which is the limit that I like for rhythm squats. 50 rep rhythm squats, double body weight. Why I stop there is because at that point, just try to get your knees further over toes, just try to go even faster, just try to get even higher. So those 3 ways, knees farther over toes, get even higher, go even faster. I'd rather do those than try to do more weight. So here I go. I'm not going to say anything else. That was my intro to this exercise, and now I'll get into it. You're catching me actually after a 50 repper on the rhythm squat with double body weight. So I'm still feeling a little nauseous from that. I did that one cold because I knew that one. Well, I wanted to show it cold just to show the level you should get your knees to in terms of trust. But it's also a fact that I knew doing all the step ups first and then trying to do the 50 repper. So doing it in reverse. So now I'm gonna jump to the Patrick step up. I have my body weight on my back. I talked about the superhuman standard being 6-inch box with body weight on back. If you want to progress further than that, I have found that there's a few ways to progress. One is with higher box, one is with more weight, one is with more reps. And I simply think the one I found to produce the most positive change is adding height. Keep the weight the same, keep the reps the same for this particular one, and add more height because it'll work your ankle mobility even more. So I'm gonna jump right into this. I'm not gonna talk once I do it because I have to stay focused. This is like my limit. And you're actually gonna see me try not on a 6-inch box, but a 9-inch box. With the Patrick step up and with the ATG split squat where we're working ankle mobility, I think it's okay for a heel to lift up to 1 centimeter. And what I mean by that is if you're actually pushing at the limit of your ankle mobility your heel may hover off just a bit. There's a difference between letting that happen and actually going to the limit of your flexibility. We all know when we do something if we're just letting the heel lift or if we're actually going to the limit of our flexibility. So that doesn't mean your progression on split squat or Patrick step up is just going to be boom, heel on the box, go up an inch, heel on the box. It might, each time you go up an inch, it might hover off a little bit until that ankle mobility improves. So if you see my ankle lifting a little bit, it's because you're actually seeing me work at the limit of my ankle mobility. And the last thing, I will start this is my starting set. Off camera, I'll balance it out. But my right leg is my non-jumping leg. It used to be way weaker on reverse step-ups, so I always do that one first. You'll see me do my non-jumping leg, which is now pretty even in strength. So with the Peterson step up, I like 6-inch box, body weight on back. I don't like changing that. I don't like trying to go higher or more weight. I'd rather see you dominate your heel angle even more. Work on getting it higher, and you could add reps. So either basically get better form or more reps, but I haven't found better benefit to raising the box height or to raising the weight, because again, the load on the muscles, if you just lift the heel more, then your knee is gonna go more over your toe and your calf is gonna have to do more work. This is your foot, this is your shin. So basically, just work the exercise harder. You'll actually get more force than trying to go riskily high or more weight. Let's take a look. With the Poliquin step up, again body weight on back, but in this case a 3-inch box because the board elevates your heel. In this case, since we're really trying to overload the maximal extension, I don't like going to a higher box once you can do body weight on back for 10. I like just adding more reps. I don't think you need more weight. I don't think you need a higher box. Just take it to rep failure once that's easy. So if you want to take it further, that is how I have found it best to do so. You'll see me exactly do that now and go to rep failure. Oh, it's on fire.